Hello and welcome to the interview here on France 24. Well, are Europe's leaders digging the grave of the common currency with short-sighted policies that pander to their own narrow interests? Are politicians acting more like slaves to the financial markets than like true statesmen? And is democracy itself becoming an illusion, subverted by speculators and the whims of financial investors? Well, my guest today, Jacques Attali, is a man who likes to ask the big questions and also to offer some big answers. Mr. Attali, you are a professor, a prolific writer, a blogger as well, and you've worn many hats over the years. You were the special advisor to the former French President François Mitterrand back in the 80s. And today you are the president of Planet Finance. That is an international, non-profit organization that tries to alleviate poverty through microfinance, which a lot of our viewers are familiar with. But I need to start with the issue we are all talking about these days, Greece. Greece, some might say, Mr. Attali, is a tragedy of errors, because Europe has seemed to speak with one voice, but now when it comes to giving the money, there's a lot of arguments still going on. They just can't seem to come together on this.
Well, Greece is a tiny issue in a global problem. The global problem is that the world, and beginning by the US, since the 2008, has not been able to put in place a real coherent strategy to reduce the public debt without jeopardizing the development of the financial sector and the economy. America is at stake, bankrupt, and the US is in a very bad situation, both in terms of growth and in terms of finance. Europe is, in a certain sense...
We're going to stay with Europe for a minute.
Europe is not in such a bad situation. I would say that America is in a worse situation than Europe. Let's speak about Europe. Europe is a group of 27 nations. Some of them have a common currency.
16 of them.
But they don't have yet gone to a point of having a federal budget. What is for sure, and as being one of the writer of the Maastricht Treaty, the first draft of the Maastricht Treaty, I would say that we knew at that moment that if we were not able to go to federalism, the common currency, the single currency, will not last, will disappear, as it was the case with the Soviet Union when the Soviet Union disappeared.
But what's, in your opinion then, what is preventing Europe from getting to the point of federalism? Is there not enough leadership?
That's, well, it's a long story for nations existing since 1,000 years to accept to become one nation. For the federalism from bottom up is difficult. Usually federalism comes from one federator, which is an empire or a dominating nation, etc. But to do a federalism bottom up has been done only once in history by Swiss people. And it's a really difficult and tough challenge. We aren't going to do that.
You have to convince people, basically, on the ground level.
First, people, the leaders have to be convinced, and they have to be bold enough to convince their leaders, that's their constituencies. That's the question today. It's clear that the level of integration today is far from being enough. That the fund that has been put in place in July is not even in place because we need the vote ratification by 16 Parliament. This is not yet the case.
By the end of September, I believe, they're set to vote.
They should have done that before because there was no reason not to convene the Parliament at the end of July, and to do that in September is a shame. The markets are quick, swift, clever.
Brutal as well.
Well, it's their rule. I mean, if we don't, what are the markets? Markets are lenders. If you don't want to depend on lenders, don't borrow. If you borrow, you have to answer to the questions of people who lend money.
But do you feel that the politicians have, as I suggested at the beginning, have become a little too beholden to the markets? The markets are dictating things.
No, it's not it is not the market, as I say.
The fear of contagion.
No. I never use the word markets because it's an abstraction. I use the word lenders.
Okay.
And if you speak about lenders, it's clearer. I mean, lenders are politely asking to be reimbursed. And if you don't want to be under the control of lenders, don't borrow to them. If you borrow to them, you have to explain that you are going to pay back, which is also the case for the US. The US is exactly in the same situation.
To use your word, though, lenders here, do you think that enough of the private creditors are taking part in the Greek bailout and in other bailouts? I think it's still 2/3, really, the governments and the European Stability Fund and the IMF, and 1/3 private creditors.
Yes, but I don't think this is the main issue, because most important, Greece is just a tiny dimension of a problem. You have Italy, you have Spain, you may have others. The problem is to have a global solution. If you look at one problem after the other, you will never find a solution. We need to put in place in Europe an instrument, which is a European treasury bill, as the US did at the end of the 18th century.
A Eurobond.
A Eurobond. And to collateralize the Eurobond tax, to finance the Eurobond, European tax. That's easy to do. It's a matter of...
Easy to do, but there's still political resistance to that idea.
Yes, of course. And this has to be done. And this will be done. The question is, will it be done too late or not? But it's clear that we need to have a global solution, not a solution Greece, Spain, Italy, Spain, whatever, France or Portugal. We need to have a global solution, which is a Eurobond available, even if it's not used. The lenders will be reassured if the Eurobond exists.
And the markets won't panic.
Won't panic.
And the markets won't panic. How much money do you think would need to be put into a stability fund to reassure the markets?
The stability fund depends. If it's the stability fund, which is a mutualized, non-federal system as it exists today, we will need 3 or 4 times what exists today, which means
several trillion dollars.
1.5 trillion. If it is Eurobond, almost zero is needed, because it's enough to say we can have Eurobonds without a limit, because don't forget that the European Union as an entity has zero debt. Therefore, the capacity of borrowing of the European Union is quasi-illimited. And therefore, it's exactly what happened in the US when, at the end of the 18th century, a government decided to issue the first T-bonds.
T-bonds, of course. I want to, just shifting track a little bit, the policies many governments, almost everyone, are taking now, austerity. Mm-hmm. And austerity, some people would say, everyone is doing it. Whether you look in the US, in Europe, it's become almost a gospel. Is there a case to be made that austerity can actually inhibit growth?
On the contrary, I think that no government is doing austerity.
You don't think anyone knows?
Of course not. If you look at the
but they call it austerity. It's legal.
If you look at the abyssal American debt, which is unimaginable, where do you see austerity?
But we've just seen a very severe round of spending cuts in the United States and no tax revenue increase.
No, true. I mean,
so you don't see austerity when you look around?
Austerity would mean a balanced budget and a reduction of the debt to 60%.
But you're talking about the ends. That's yes. The goal, to get to a balanced budget. But right now, governments are in the process of slashing public spending, public programs, social programs.
They announced it, but American taxpayers are not paying $1 more. What has been announced in terms of reduction of spending is just words for the moment.
But programs are being cut.
It's just announced.
But they just had riots in England over, and then they're not part of the Eurozone.
Yes, but that's the amount of the debt in the UK is 100% of the GDP. Mm. Where is austerity in a nation which has 100% of GDP? I don't see any austerity at all.
So more austerity is needed, in your opinion?
I don't say austerity. That word doesn't mean anything. What is needed is a reduction of a debt, public debt, by raising taxes, by increasing growth, and by balancing the financial sector. We should not focus only on the public debt. What is very important is that for the first time in mankind history, economic history of the West, we have simultaneously high level of public debt and high level of private debt and high level of bad loans within the banks. And this is very dangerous.
It's a fatal mix. We were mentioning taxes before, and I want to bring up recently U.S. billionaire Warren Buffett wrote a provocative opinion piece in which he basically said to the U.S. government, "Hi, I'm a billionaire. Please tax me more. You're not taxing me enough."
As you know, the American taxpayers are in a very strange situation because they can avoid tax by giving to philanthropy whatever they want.
There are loopholes, yeah.
Which is enormous. And then Warren Buffett has already done it by giving almost 90%
Half
of
his fortune,
fortune to the Gates Foundation, which is a way to avoid tax but too big to public goods, which is what Bill Gates Foundation is doing.
But the basic argument remains.
But that means that he gives to private philanthropy, not to the federal government. I think that the U.S. should think about reducing those loopholes in order to increase what they get from the rich.
The revenues from the rich, and not just the super rich, but the moderately rich, I would say.
Well, I would. It's a matter of knowing what you call rich. I prefer to speak to differentiate between mobile money, which is money that you use to create new wealth, innovation, etc.,
right,
and stable money, such as land, inherited money, whatever is not creative.
Which isn't creating growth and wealth.
This should be taxed.
Very little time left. Are you optimistic or pessimistic about the economy here in Europe in the year to come?
We are intertwined, the U.S., China, and Europe, and I think that we are on the verge of a very, very deep depression.
Depression, not
yes,
recession.
If we don't put in place a global governance.
Well, I'm going to leave it with those words there. Basically a call for more harmonization, more federalism here in Europe.
And worldwide.
And worldwide. It's been an elusive goal so far. Jacques Attali, my guest today, the president of Planet Finance, which is an organization that provides microfinance to help alleviate poverty. Thank you very much for sharing your views on what I think everyone would agree is a crisis here in the 16-member Eurozone.
And in the world.
And thanks to all of you for watching France 24. You can get all your news and updates on www.france24.com.